It's said a picture is worth 1,000 words. If that's true, the question becomes, what 1,000 words best describe this snippet of time? Without the written word, details of the experience fade as moments turn into days, months, then years. Smiling faces can hide many tales. Today, I want to help you start a journey, or provide information to help you continue your writing adventure that will tell future generations your unique story. There are 5 writing considerations that we will look at. Those are, what life experiences do you want to pass on? What do you hope to achieve by telling your story? What potential impact will your version of the story have on others? What are some potential resources? And finally, is it necessary to enlist the help of others to stay committed? But before we go any further, let's take a moment to examine 2 words, autobiography and memoir. Technically speaking, depending on the dictionary you use, an autobiography is the author's narrative about his or her entire life. A memoir is reserved for the author's narrative about an important part of his or her life. And there lies the blurring of the distinction. Let me explain. Memoirs generally deal with themes such as overcoming personal obstacles, coming-of-age stories, public figures sharing their personal lives and thoughts, dealing with catastrophic events. The possibilities are extensive, and often the details laying the foundation for the subject at hand and the resolution or lessons that follow cover decades. So, because of the number of years covered, you will find some of the books discussed today are listed as autobiographies and memoirs. Over 2,000 years ago, Cicero, a Roman statesman, wrote, "History is the witness that testifies to the passing of time. It illuminates reality, vitalizes memory, provides guidance in daily life, and brings us tidings of antiquities." His writings proclaim the importance of serving as witnesses of our time. Before we talk about your story, let's briefly look at various reasons some writers shared their experiences. Then, we'll examine the writings of several Harford County writers who left us their stories. The desire to share experience is likely as old as the first breath of adventure. Stories were traditionally passed down by word of mouth, generation to generation. But the ability to pass those stories more accurately to future generations is made possible through the written word. The first known Western autobiography was by St. Augustine of Hippo. In it, he reveals his journey from a life of youthful indulgences to a spiritual renewal. Julius Caesar chronicled his military campaigns against several Gallic tribes to enhance his image with the Roman government. Since his time, numerous military leaders have followed suit. The story of my life covers Helen Keller's struggles to the age of 21. Although she became blind and deaf at 19 months old, she triumphed over adversity with the help of her miracle worker, Annie Sullivan. Keller died in 1968, but her successes continue to inspire. Christina Crawford penned a therapeutic revenge memoir about her mother, actress Joan Crawford, in Mommy Dearest. After her famous Hollywood mother's death, Christina wanted the last word about their relationship, and she had it with a written word. Natural disasters can ravish a country, but Sonali Daran Aryugula makes it personal by divulging the impact of the 2004 tsunami in Sri Lanka, when it claimed her 2 sons, her parents, and her husband. Wave is her saga of physical and emotional survival. Becoming is one of the most perfect titles for an autobiography, for we are all in a state of becoming. Michelle Obama's book looks at the people and events that have shaped her life thus far. Hippo, Caesar, and Obama were or are public figures. Crawford's mother was famous. Daran Aryugula experienced a disaster event and dared to share the depth of her suffering and her comeback. But what about the stories of people who are not so well known, or events that are not so catastrophic? I have chosen 4 books to examine by current and former Harford County residents. On what level did they want to connect to their readers? I'll read a passage or 2 from each book. The purpose of the selection is not to reveal the detailed journey of the author, but instead to point out some of their methods of telling their stories and to pique your curiosity so you will read them for yourself. As these books are discussed, think about how readers could identify with you and your life and how you will present your story. Dwight Pettit, author of Under Color of Law, lived in Aberdeen, Maryland. His father, George D. Pettit, wanted his son to have the best opportunities for an education. In the 60s, schools identified as colored schools did not offer the best path, so his father sued the Board of Education of Harford County to grant his son admission to Aberdeen High School. The smiling pictures of his high school days threw me back to my school years, but his narrative told a much different experience. Pettit, who was a standout athlete, wrote about athletics and race. One thing that promotes the social integration process faster than anything I've ever seen in American life is athletics. If one is an athlete, if one can shoot the ball, throw the ball, run the ball, hit the ball, kick the ball, or knock someone out, it almost neutralizes the fact of color. It can bring about an instant change in someone's attitude and can create social acceptance overnight. In other words, athletics creates a transition in attitudes and speeds up the entire integration process. That observation was followed up just a few pages later with this. Despite the legal struggle to achieve enrollment, it had never really struck my psyche until then that you could be superior, yet you could be told you could not do something for no other reason in the world other than the fact that you were black. But as a kid, 15 years old, that was the harsh reality, upfront and personal, of what my father had already told me. Coach Swartz called me into his office about a week before the first game. He said I could play any other position on the team, but I could not play quarterback. The interesting aspect about this was that they still did not have a quarterback, and they needed one right away because they had not prepared anybody for the upcoming game. In addition to his high school years, Pettit's book provides other insights into his life, including his family history, a personal trilogy of court cases, his political involvement with Jimmy Carter, and his journey as a lawyer in Baltimore. In her autobiography, Far from the Tree, Pat Higgins Adelhart, Harford County resident at Applewood Farm, illuminates many of the dark shadows that came together to entangle her adult life in depression. Her writings reveal many things, including an insecure father's sarcasm and mood swings, a family pattern of concealment, a college roommate's betrayal of trust, and the long-sought praise that never came. Despite the darkness, Adelhart provides remembrances of joy and humor. She also artfully weaves in the time frame of her story as evidenced by her experience with smoking. My parents and their friends smoked for as long as I could remember. Everybody in the movies, television, offices, restaurants, doctors' offices, and hospitals smoked. For weeks, as soon as Mom and Dad went to bed, I unearthed the pack of cigarettes hidden at the back of my desk, doused the lights, and quietly opened the window. The air was frigid, but I was in training. Taking a deep breath, I put the filtered end of the menthol Salem between my lips, struck a match, and dragged. Fits of coughing ensued as I fanned the smoke to keep it going out the east window. I smothered my face in my pillow to suppress the racking coughs. As they subsided, I listened intently, holding my cigarette out the window. My heart beat like a snare drum until I assured myself that the house remained quiet and Mom and Dad still slept, unaware of my subterfuge. She had a delightful way of approaching parts of her growing up. She also shares a personal breakthrough to her psychological survival in Chapter 8 entitled Undaunted. But there will be no spoiler alert in this presentation. Read the book and discover for yourself how she begins to reclaim her life and chart her future far from the tree. A day on the water can be relaxing and rejuvenating, but nature does not always smile. In Tragedy on the Susquehanna Flats, 1968, Galen Ray Miles reveals the impact of losing friends at a young age. The prologue to the book is written like a novel. It grabs your attention. It shares an omnipotent view of her friend's struggle to find the shore and look for help for his two high school friends. His fingers were numb from the cold and the tight hold on the empty gas can. It was his time to go. Death was real, but here he was. He sucked in another breath of cold, misty air as the storm waves crashed against his face like slapping hands, then slammed his body to the right, sometimes to the left. Pitch black, 34-mile-an-hour wind, air temperature 38 degrees, water much colder. He was too weak to fight it, but with his grip frozen on the gas can, he was forced to persevere, even though he had resigned himself to die in the environs he loved. How long had he been in the water? No telling. No moon, no stars, nothing to guide him, to give him a clue, just the fierce black storm. Had it been hours, days, or his 26 years that brought him to this very moment? It didn't matter, because this moment, he was convinced, was to be his last. Somewhere behind him, his two boyhood friends were dying, or most likely already dead. In this book, you will be introduced to many individuals. Their part in the story is not always chronological, so you will find the table of contents helpful in keeping track of the story's timeline. Events take place throughout Harford County, Maryland. Her descriptive narrative brings forgotten landmarks, stores, and people back to life. Perhaps you're thinking right now, I don't have enough drama or excitement in my life to write a book. Perhaps not, but you do have life experiences that are worthy of sharing. What have you experienced that would be of interest to others? Are there memories that you want to leave behind for those you love? Have you worked through difficulties and want to light the way for others? While you start to ponder, let me show you an example of a collaborative work. Brightview Avondale senior living residents share a period of time that is of such great significance it impacted the world. That event was World War II. The war extracted a cost from everyone, but not all paid the same price. It is this difference that makes their books of memories so exceptional. Within this anthology, you will find the lingering effects of being on the front lines, the courage and stamina of those holding up the home front, and how the greatest generation dealt with adversity. These remembrances have been issued in 2 volumes and were prepared by the Avondale Veterans Committee. Bill Hassler edited the collective works. Because I know a number of the residents, it was hard to choose a selection to read. So I opted to read an anonymous story that was left at the Aberdeen Room Archives Museum in 2014 and provided for inclusion in the book by Charlotte Cronin, one of the founders of the museum. It underscores the need for humor in our darkest hours. Dear unfortunate civilian friend, I am very enthusiastic about Army life. We lie in bed every morning until at least 6 o'clock. This gives us plenty of time to get washed and dressed and make the bunks, etc. by 6:10. At 6:15 we stand outside and shiver while some blanked out blows a bugle. Reasonably chilled, we grope our way through darkness to the mess hall. Here we have a hearty breakfast consisting of an unidentified liquid and a choice of white or rye crusts. We waddle back, gorged, to the barracks. Until 7:30, we just sit around and scrub toilets, mop floors, wash windows, and pick up all the matchsticks and cigarette butts within a radius of 2,000 feet of the barracks. At 8 o'clock, we put on our light packs and go for a tramp in the hills. The light pack includes gun, bayonet, canteen, meat can, cup, shaving kit, pup tent, raincoat, cartridge belt, first aid kit, fire extinguisher, tent pins and pole, rope, hand axe, small spade, and other negligible items. Carrying my light pack, I weighed 217 1/4 pounds. I weighed exactly 131 pounds when I left home, so you can see how easy it is to gain weight in the Army. As one story ends, others wait to be told. What do you want to pass on? Don't try and weasel out of this challenge. If you don't know where to start, let me give you some ideas, captured by possible titles. How about The Crooked Road to Paradise? Have your experiences taken you on a spiritual journey, or a road to material wealth or romance? Perhaps a title like that could work for you. How about Running from Crazy? Did you grow up in a dysfunctional family? Have you needed to flee a difficult relationship? Have you ever considered going off the grid to escape the pressures of the internet? Maybe those words would inspire you. How about these words? Wolves, lambs, and honeybees. Do you have a story to share which has been influenced by the people who entered and perhaps left your life? Maybe these three types of creatures capture their essence. At this point, some of you may feel a bit overwhelmed with the prospect of writing an entire book. So let's take a step back and think about the World War II Memories book from the Avondale residence. Are you involved with a society and an association, a church, a club, or another type of group? Would there be sufficient interest in a collaborative writing effort? Possible efforts could include sharing experiences by the decades. Perhaps, what did you do in the 60s? How did they impact your life? That included the Vietnam War, civil rights protests, the assassinations of U.S. President John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, or, on a lighter side, the impact of the musical British invasion. The 70s may be an opportunity to share pictures and anecdotes about bell-bottom jeans and the rise of disco, along with all the new technological changes that happen. Or the collaborative work could be more personal. Perhaps how your family came to this community, how you met your spouse, or how you left your spouse. Life lessons from raising children. Words of wisdom from your mother and or father. What has taken place in your life as a result of COVID-19? Perhaps that is this generation's World War II. Meet with your friends. Take time to listen to others and discover your connections. You may have the beginnings of an anthology. The first key to finishing is to start. Let's go back to those questions we began with and flesh them out a bit. The first one, what experiences do you want to pass on? Secondly, is there enough meat on the bone for a whole book? Would it work better as a theme collection? What do you hope to achieve by telling your story? Do you want family members to be better understanding of the people and events that shaped your life? Do you want to alert others to avoid certain pitfalls that you encountered during your lifetime? Do you want to inspire others to love, to strive, and or hope? What potential impact will your version of the story have? Will others be inspired, helped, entertained, enlightened? Will people referenced in your book be flattered or angered? Would it be helpful to interview them before finishing your book? If individuals are no longer living, should you touch base with a family member of theirs? Would it be wise to give them an advance copy before making it available to others? What are some potential resources? First of all, people. People who lived it with you. People who knew those people. Bring out the yearbooks and memory books and personal journeys. Thumb through those. Go to your library and look at old newspapers. Listen to songs of the time. They might inspire you. And never forget your historical societies. Is it necessary to enlist the help of others to stay committed? I think so sometimes. Join a writer's group. Attend a writer's seminar. Take up the November National Novel Writing Month Challenge online. Enroll in a writing class. Perhaps with yours truly at Harford Community College? Whether you write a book or a story for an anthology, consider why you want to write it. If it is purely therapeutic, you may be your only reader, and that is as good enough a reason to write as any. Or you may want the audience to be restricted to family members. The purpose and audience may change as you progress, but it is helpful to start with an idea of why you want to write and who you envision reading your work. If your story covers a prolonged period, a timeline may be useful. Plot out pertinent years and months and insert words or phrases which capture relevant events. A chronological account will likely be easier for a reader to follow, especially one who doesn't know your story. But flashbacks can be used masterfully and can be very effective. Do your research. Be honest in your writing. But remember, this is only your version of the events. Others may remember them differently. Think about how much time, effort, and money you are able and willing to invest. If it is important to you, you will make it happen. If your mind travels faster than your typing fingers, consider purchasing a recording device and tell your stories to the machine. All of these are suggestions to get you going. Hopefully, our time together encourages you to start or continue your writing adventure. But this is only the first step. Now you must make the next move. Don't leave your history behind. You lived it. You learned it. Now pass it on. I'll now turn the program back over to the moderator to open up the question and answer period. Bring it on.